Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training on healthy relationships and your littles. For all that you do as bigs. So I'm a former Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kentuckiana enrollment and match support. Bigs put in, as well as the impact this organization has in our community. And that impact is all due to you. So the amazing bigs who believe in mentorship, families who encourage the match, and of course, the wonderful and expert staff at Big Brothers Big Sisters who support you, your littles, and families each and every day. I also wanted to thank you for simply tuning in and learning about such an important topic. And I am from the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation, also known as PIRE. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Dr. Ashley Simon Rudolph and Rachel Bauer, as well as the amazing Amanda Steinhauer from Big Brothers Big Sisters. She's a match support specialist and enrollment specialist. But before diving into the content, I just wanted to briefly provide a bit of background information about our organization and this initiative. So PIRE is a public health research and evaluation nonprofit here in Louisville, Kentucky. And with a grant funded by the Office of Women's Health, we are currently partnering with the Center for Women and Families and Volunteers of America to expand HIV testing and intimate partner violence screening, as well as partnering with other community organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kentuckiana to increase awareness and reduce stigma on intimate partner violence and other related topics. So during this webinar, we will discuss these three topics that are on the slide. So first, what are intimate partner violence and teen dating violence? Then we'll discuss how to recognize teen dating violence. And lastly, how to talk to your littles about dating violence and healthy relationships. We also know that some of this material may be triggering or upsetting. So at this time, I just want to give a friendly reminder to, do what you need to do to take care of yourself during this presentation. So if that means, pausing your video and taking a break, that's okay and encouraged. All right, so let's get started. We're going to ask you now to think about your interactions with a little or another young person. So have you ever had an interaction with your little or a young person that made you wonder whether they were in an unhealthy relationship? Either by what they said or their sudden changes in behavior. So if you've never had such an interaction, you may be asking yourself, how is this relevant to my role as a big? If you have had an interaction that made you wonder, if the little or the young person was in an unhealthy relationship, you may be wondering, how should I engage or start that conversation with my little about healthy relationships? Or if you're really unsure if you have or haven't, you might ask, what are some of the signs and red flags of unhealthy dating in teens that I should be aware of? So these are all great questions, and we'll address each one throughout the presentation today. Intimate partner violence and dating violence can impact littles or youth in different ways, right? So parents of littles may be experiencing intimate partner violence, or IPV for short, and littles therefore may have been exposed to parents' IPV. The parent may share their experiences with you, or a little may share their parents' experience with you, during an outing. If the parent is experiencing IPV, the family may need to temporarily stay with a family member or a friend, or maybe even a shelter. Or they may not have the resources to do what appears much at all. Therefore, it's important for bigs to be equipped with the knowledge to understand the complexities of intimate partner violence, including an understanding of the reasons behind a parent's actions or a response, and aware of the resources that are available in our community. In addition, litters themselves may be experiencing or have experienced teen dating violence. Teenagers and young people are vulnerable to dating violence just as much as adults. Dating can be, confusing at this time. They're really learning how to date and how to set boundaries. It's a time where they're figuring out, what's normal in a relationship, what's expected of them, and having that sounding board to talk about these things with, whether it be a parent or a trusted adult, like a mentor, is very important. And in the next slides, Rachel will define IPV, discuss the forms of power and control of dating violence, and Ashley will provide information on how to recognize signs of teen dating violence.
Hello, everyone. As Camila mentioned, my name is Rachel, and I'll be talking to you more in depth about IPV. So for today's presentation, we're really broadly identifying IPV. When we talk about it, we mean that it's a pattern of behaviors used to gain and maintain power and control over another person in an intimate relationship. And by pattern, we mean behaviors repeated over time. In terms of control, perpetrators may use violence or threats to manipulate or get what they want from their partners. An intimate relationship means different things to different people, right? It can be a current or former partner. It can include a sexual relationship or not. The type or duration of the relationship is not an aspect of IPV. IPV is defined by the behavior and not by the nature of the intimate relationship. IPV can also occur in all types of relationships. So short-term, long-term dating relationships, married couples, couples who are wealthy, couples experiencing poverty, and those who are living together or not living together. It's important to remember that there are other terms that are frequently used interchangeably with IPV, such as domestic violence, dating violence, partner abuse, etc. While there are overlaps between these terms, this training is specific to intimate relationship violence among young people who are unmarried and not living together. So in the previous slide, we gave a really broad definition of control. Here we have specific examples of control that we've categorized into broader themes, including sexual, physical, and economic abuse, as well as controlling and isolating behaviors. These actions included on this slide are examples of tactics an abusers can use in order to intentionally gain and maintain power and control over their partner. While emotional abuse is often described as insulting, belittling, or threatening someone, it also includes making someone doubt their own beliefs or feelings by manipulating the truth. So for example, an abuser might say, "You're wrong, you never remember things correctly," or "You're too sensitive." Controlling and isolating behaviors are tactics abusers use to control who their partners have contact with, what information their partner shares with others, as well as erode their partner support system by creating distance and weakening the bonds with family, friends, and coworkers. While these examples are commonly found in relationships with IPV, know that this is not a complete list of all the forms of power and control as a checklist. It's also important to remember that often violent relationships are not violent 24/7. There may not be physical violence occurring, but if emotional violence, threats, or intimidation are present, so is IPV. It's important to recognize fear of violence as coercive as violence itself. IPV can be chronic and progressive, as shown with this graph. This continuum really indicates that without change, the ultimate result of ongoing emotional and psychological abuse can be very dangerous and even lethal. The arrow showing the upward trajectory is meant to describe the increasing danger, but that's not really to minimize the threat IPV still presents earlier in the continuum. This graphic also highlights that often, but not always, the first occurrences of IPV could be categorized as less lethal, and if the IPV continues, violence may not be consistently escalating. There may be periods where violence may de-escalate occur in the future. Many people who experience IPV victimization do not identify what is happening in their relationship as IPV. For them, IPV may be normal or what they're accustomed to. Abusive partners generally minimize and deny IPV and even blame their partner. Thus, people who experience IPV victimization may come to believe that they're at fault, that they are too sensitive, or that they deserve to be treated this way. For example, someone might say, "They're not insulting me, they're just joking," or "They're not controlling me, they're protecting me because they know it's best." Even if the violence is escalating, it may be really difficult for people experiencing IPV to make the connection. One of the most frequently misunderstood things about IPV is why people remain in situations that are not safe or healthy for them. Why don't they just break up? What's wrong with this question? It blames the survivor for the partner's behavior. It implies that violence is not a societal problem, but a private issue. It implies that the survivor has never thought of leaving or tried leaving. It implies that survivors don't leave. It implies that it's an easy decision. Risks of staying versus leaving. There are lots of reasons why people stay in a dangerous or unhealthy relationship. Some of these include love, fear of retribution, believing the abuse is their own fault, family or friend influences, believing things will return to normal, faith or religious beliefs, sexual gender orientation status. Why people go back includes many of the same reasons why they can't leave. It's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. 1 in 3 adolescents in the US is a victim of sexual, physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, a figure that far exceeds the rates of other types of youth violence. 1 in 10 high school students may be purposefully hit, slapped, or physically hurt by a boyfriend or girlfriend. Girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rate of intimate partner violence, almost triple the national average. It can lead to a lifelong pattern of abuse. The severity of intimate partner violence in adulthood is often greater in cases where the pattern of abuse was established in adolescence. It's associated with other risks. Being physically or sexually abused makes teen girls 6 times more likely to become pregnant and twice as likely to get a sexually transmitted infection. Half of youth who have been victims of both dating violence and rape attempt suicide, compared to approximately 13% of non-abused girls and 5% of non-abused boys. It's silent. Only 33% of teens who were in a violent relationship ever told anyone about the abuse. 81% of parents believe teen dating violence is not an issue, or they don't admit that they don't know if it's an issue. So along with all the reasons that we discussed in the last slide, here are additional reasons why they don't just break up. IPV can cause littles to withdraw from activities they used to enjoy, behavioral changes like biting nails or can't sit still, as well as changes in diet or weight, self-injury, among others. IPV can cause injury, chronic unexplained pain, or even death. IPV can lead to depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, anger control issues, and substance misuse. Many people experiencing IPV victimization turn to substances as a means to cope with violence or are coerced into using drugs by their partner. IPV can result in isolation from friends and family who don't want to get involved. People who do not understand IPV can hurt survivors even more, or even re-traumatize them by asking questions and questioning their choices rather than offering support. IPV can also result in shame and stigma. Unfortunately, when survivors disclose or seek help, they sometimes face victim blaming, even when others don't intend to make them feel blamed.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ashley Simons Rudolph. I'm also an employee at PIRE, Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. You don't see my face now because I'm actually running the slide. Wonderful to have you all here. I'm going to be talking about how to recognize teen dating violence. There's nothing that is an exact prescription that will describe relationship abuse. But we wanted to flag a few things that, if you notice, might be a reason that you want to look more closely into the problems. So problems with attendance, particularly if it's a new problem, problems with your littles having a lack of interest in extracurricular activities, unexplained changes in behavior, grades, or appearance, them sending excessive text or being really worried about responding right away and that being new behavior, changes in their social media use, changes in terms of needing others' passwords or having others' passwords or being asked for their passwords, things related to using pictures as a threat. Also, isolation from their former friends and little social contact with anyone except the dating partner, making excuses or apologizing for the dating partner's inappropriate behavior, unexplained bruises or injuries. Again, these are just red flags. It's not an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea of some of the things that you could look for as red flags of relationship abuse. So one by one, we're going to talk about some examples of dating violence, and we'll talk about one, then we'll cover a little bit more content, and then revisit with some skills for the second scenario. Sorry about that. I'll read this so you don't have to read everything on the screen. Lisa and Brian have been dating on and off for 2 years. When they first started dating, they were soulmates, and Brian promised to take her away from Louisville and her abusive family as soon as he could. Looking back, she remembered that he would take her home from school every day and began questioning her if she were late. He said he was jealous of her male friends who talked to her at school because he loved her. He told her that to be his girl, she needed to stop hanging out with all those guys because she was too beautiful. He also disparaged her girlfriends, calling them names like hoes and idiots. And by her senior year, she didn't hang out with any of her old friends very often because it made Brian mad. One of her friends was having a big party and begged her to come. Lisa knew that Brian wouldn't approve, so she told him that she wasn't feeling well and that she couldn't go out. She went to the party instead. Brian found out that Lisa was at the party and was dancing with another guy. He confronted her in the lunchroom and slapped her across the face. She felt humiliated, but made excuses to the people around her that she deserved it because she had lied to him. All right, thinking about this situation for a minute, what do you see as some of the red flags of teen dating violence? I'll give you a minute, and then we're going to ask Rachel and Camila that question. Okay, Rachel, what did you see in this scenario that made you suspicious of teen dating violence?
So the first thing that really struck me was that on the surface, it seems really sweet that Brian would pick Lisa up and take her home from school. But the fact that he would question her if she was late really makes me think back to the list of the forms of power and control that we discussed earlier. It's like Brian wants to be able to monitor and control Lisa's schedule.
Thank you for that. Camila, what would you add? Camila, you may be on mute.
Oh, I was on mute. Sorry about that.
No
so,
problem.
I also identify the emotional abuse and the manipulative behavior that Brian is demonstrating. For example, like isolating her from her network of support. For example, Lisa, no longer hangs out with her male friends or her girlfriends, and when she does, she lies about it to not upset Brian. And of course, the physical abuse that is going on, and she's blaming herself for it.
Lots of red flags of teen dating violence, and certainly in a scenario like this or situation like this that you find with your littles, it's definitely worth thinking more about, starting a conversation with your little and even reaching out to your match support specialist. Thank you so much, Rachel and Camila. Before we do another active listening skills, Camila?
Yeah. On the slide, you'll see here 6 key active listening skills. We don't want to push littles to disclose information they may not be ready to disclose. This could be a process of, getting them to open up when they are ready, and that may take time. So just because they may be ready to talk about some elements does not mean that they may be talk about everything. So just be patient and aware of that. The point of this slide is to remind you of some things to keep in mind if littles start to disclose to you. First, pay attention. Littles can tell when they don't have your attention, and they will stop talking. Use words and nonverbal cues that you are listening, like and of course making eye contact. Also try to be non-judgmental. Reflect or say back to the youth what they have told you, so they know you understand. For example, you might say, it sounds like your partner has not physically hurt you, but sometimes they have threatened to hurt you. You could also reflect the young person's feelings, like, I see you are starting to cry. I know this may be painful to talk about. In addition, clarify what they have just shared, making sure you understand what the mentee has said. For example, you mentioned that your partner has threatened to hurt you, but I can't tell from what you've said if this is still going on. Summarize means pulling it all together across what the little has told you. So you might say something like, you've mentioned that your partner screams and curses at you all the time. It sounds like you do want to talk to someone about that, even though you are nervous about talking to a stranger. But you said you can't keep crazy. And finally, the last component of the 6 key active listening skills is to share. So sharing a supportive statement and sharing concerns with the match support specialist. So on the screen are examples of supportive statements that littles may need to hear from you, like, I believe you. Make sure the little knows that you believe what they're telling you. Many people who experience violence victimization are concerned that no one will believe them, so they don't tell anyone. And also their abusive partner may have told them that no one will believe you. Because youth sometimes doubt their own instincts and reactions, it's also important for them to hear that however they are responding is normal for someone in their situation. Their reaction to violence victimization may be to cry, to be angry, to feel guilty, to use substances, to engage in other risk behaviors, or to be depressed and numb. All of these reactions are normal. Mentees experiencing IPV victimization also need to know that they aren't alone. What they are describing is common and happens to a lot of people, as Rachel shared earlier. Remember, just IPV is very common, and IPV survivors need to hear that other people have experienced what they have experienced. And finally, because IPV survivors may blame themselves or their partner or others may blame them, they need to hear from you that what has happened is not their fault. That people who experience violence victimization are never to blame for the violence or the perpetrator's behavior, and that no one deserves to experience violence victimization. So now we're going to take just a couple of minutes to practice using supportive statements. So imagine the client tells you, or your little, or someone tells you, he hits me, fine, but he can be so sweet to me sometimes. I mean, all couples fight. So I'll give you just a minute to think about it, and then we'll hear from Ashley and Rachel. Okay, so Ashley and Rachel, how would you respond using supportive statements to a situation like this one?
Thanks, Camila. This feels really realistic to me and is really tough, right? Because, you see something that for you might feel quite obviously violence, but your little's justifying it. So I might say something like, it sounds like you have found a way to survive his sweet and his not so sweet behavior, but no one deserves just to survive in a relationship. I might also say something like, you don't want to normalize the violence, but you also don't want to alienate yourself in that relationship with a little. So I might also say something like, physical violence is never okay, but I know you have the strength to demand that he treat you like you should be treated or walk away from the situation. And just trying to build up their confidence and build on the confidence that they have.
Those are great supportive statements, Ashley. Like that these are very difficult conversations to have. And I think that this is a moment where you can share with your little what is a healthy relationship, because they may have never experienced one. So I would say, I believe you when you say that he's nice to you, but it's never okay for anyone to hit you. Relationships aren't like math class where showing love to your partner really cancels out abuse, especially with something as serious as hitting you. I would also say something along the lines of, you're right that couples fight. I mean, everyone that's ever been in a relationship has probably been a fight with their loved one. But even if you say something really mean in the heat of the moment, like really, really mean, there is nothing that you could ever do or say to your partner that would ever make it okay to hit them.
Excellent examples. You know, you all indicated the red flags while also encouraging the person with supportive statements to either affirming that they have the strength to do either of those. So thanks for sharing. So in the previous slides, we mentioned the importance of sharing your concerns with your match support specialist. Cases of IPV and teen dating violence need to be handled immediately and delicately because of this uncertainty of the perpetrator's response. So it is best to leave it to the experts and contact your match support specialist. They will provide you with the best support and also support the family in the way they are trained to do so. So at this time, I will pass the baton to Amanda. As I mentioned earlier, she's a match support specialist at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kentuckiana, who has joined us today to talk about the ways in which a match support specialist would support a big, a little, and or family in such a situation.
Hello, I'm Amanda Steinhauer, and I've worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters for about 1.5 years now. So one thing that's really important is that we want to be able to support all bigs in any issue that may arise throughout the course of the match. A match support specialist is always available to help with any concerns or problems that may occur in a match, with a little or with their family. With a subject as sensitive as interpersonal violence or teen dating violence, it's essential that you reach a specialist for guidance. We've worked with teens in abusive or controlling relationships, with families who are experiencing ongoing domestic violence, and with youth who have witnessed interpersonal violence in their past. When this subject comes up in a match, whether it's a new incident or an experience from their past that a little wants to discuss, it can be hard for a big to know how to respond. Reach out to their match support specialist anytime they feel the need. In a situation where interpersonal violence is a concern, the match support specialist will first and foremost assess the child's safety. If the match support specialist feels that the little may be in danger, they may have to file a report in order to help keep the little safe. A big may call to talk about domestic violence taking place in the little's home. When a big calls to talk about interpersonal violence that is occurring or has occurred in the little's home, the match support specialist will help coach bigs on how to actively listen to their littles and support them non-judgmentally. When working with the family or little, we may refer families to the Center for Women and Families or provide bigs or families with other available resources in the community. In some cases, a match support specialist may also assist a family in developing a safety plan to keep them safe if violence were to occur in the future. It's important to note that leaving an abusive or controlling relationship can be very difficult and scary for an individual. That's why it's so important to be judgmental. If a big calls with concerns about a dating situation involving their little, a match support specialist will listen and help them identify red flags and coach a big on how to best address these concerns. For example, if a little's partner is always telling them what they can and can't wear, a match support specialist might encourage them to bring up those concerns with their little, but to do so in a non-judgmental way. So instead of saying, your partner's awful and you need to leave them right now, a match support specialist might encourage a big to say, you know, that kind of concerns me for you. In a healthy relationship, you should be able to wear whatever clothes you want to wear without worrying what your partner's going to say. How do you feel when your partner tells you what you can or can't wear? When bigs reach out to their match support specialists, they're able to access a wealth of knowledge, not only from their individual match, but from the Big Brother Big Sister staff as a whole. We have staff members who have worked for CPS, as crisis counselors for people who have experienced power-based personal violence, as caseworkers for children in foster homes, and with people living with HIV, as well as a variety of other things. Our staff has a wide variety of skills and expertise, and we all work together to ensure that each BIG is successful in their role and is able to navigate any challenges that may arise, such as interpersonal violence.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We've talked about ways to identify teen relationship and dating violence. We've talked about those red flags and some things to do and the support that a match support specialist can give. But we don't have to wait until there's a problem to have a conversation with our littles about healthy teen relationships. So to start that conversation, think about what a healthy relationship looks like. One activity that might be fun to do with your littles is to develop a healthy relationship board. So in this, you would just take some pictures. You can take it from a magazine, you could have drawings, you can have any kind of physical representation, but you want to help the little envision the healthy relationships that already exist in their life. So these can be friends or significant others. They could be family members. They also can be people with whom the little may not know personally, but they think model healthy relationships, like characters on TV or in music. They might be people who are peers who they can go to for support about relationships and just life stuff. It may be a person in their school, like a caseworker, it could be a counselor, it could be an assistant principal, someone in their school that they feel that they can go to for support about relationships or other safe adults. And it could include things like numbers for, community-based services, like Amanda had said, reaching out to the community if they need someone to talk to. And you're not available, match support specialist is not available. So the idea here is just really to get the little thinking about who has healthy relationships in their life and who they have healthy relationships with as well. You can also take this a step further, again, depending on your relationship with the little and where they are developmentally. You can talk about what they might want in an intimate relationship. So qualities that they want in a partner: someone who's a good listener, someone who's funny or nice to them and nice to their friends. You can talk about behavior that they expect to see, like respect. What does respect actually look like? How do you know if you're being respected? Sometimes just articulating simple things like this can really help a little think about boundaries and expectations that they want for dating relationships as they begin their lives dating. Talking about open communication and helping them define what their own boundaries are. Also talking about things like shared characteristics. Like, for example, whether or not they are willing to date someone who's not exclusively dating them and what that might mean. What that might mean in a social media kind of world too, where designating whether or not a different meeting altogether, right? Who's paying for dates? Who plans dates? Other kinds of shared characteristics like, liking the same kind of music and, things that you can do together. So think about these qualities, behavior, and shared characteristics and other things that your littles may want in an intimate relationship and help them think now, before they're in long-term relationships, what it is that they might want for themselves. So as promised, we have another scenario. Here we want to go a step further, we want to identify, yes, the problems in this scenario, the red flags, but also go a step further and talk about how we might respond and normalize a healthy relationship. So again, I'll read scenario 2. Andrea is having a sleepover with her friend Carla, and she confides in her that she is stressed about her relationship. Carla tells Andrea that her boyfriend texts her a lot when she's not with him, and if she doesn't respond quickly, he'll flood her with more texts. Although most of the texts are sweet, others make her feel uneasy or guilty. She also says he likes it when she sends him sexually explicit pictures of herself, so she's done it a couple of times. Any harm in it at first, but now he insists that she does it, even when she doesn't want to. She says that she tries to tell him she isn't comfortable doing it anymore. And he said since she did it before, that she has to do it again. She also says that he tells her since she is his girlfriend, this is something that she's expected to do. Recently, he has told her that he will even leak the ones that she already sent if she doesn't continue to send them. But she trusts that he would never do such a thing because he loves her. So again, the question is red flags and how would you respond and normalize a healthy relationship? Camila, I'll call on you first this time. What do you think about this scenario?
So I think I would, say something like, Carla, what I am hearing is that your boyfriend has not physically hurt you, but it has made you feel guilty and uneasy for not responding to his text, one, and then has even threatened you, for not doing what you told him makes you uncomfortable. Boundaries is a normal part of every relationship, and your boyfriend should respect that boundary that you set. You're not expected to do anything you're uncomfortable doing. He says he loves you, but real love does not hurt and does not make you feel these ways.
Yeah, thanks for that. Love should feel like love, and normalizing that for your littles. Rachel, what would you add to that?
So I would say that, Carla, you shared that your boyfriend is threatening to share intimate photos that only you intended for him to see. Someone who really loves you and respects you would never make you feel like you have to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, or to really even threaten to share anything that is so intimate as a means to get you to do what they want you to do. Someone who loves you would respect something that was shared in the intimate space of a loving relationship.
Yeah, good points. And don't forget, you always have your match support specialist to lend a hand and to talk with. It's also great, even if you think that the conversation went well, a match support specialist can also be there for you and so that you have someone to talk with. Again, like we talked about in the beginning, these topics can be personal and really heavy. So I really encourage you to use those resources that are available to you and your match support specialist. So now let's move on and talk about how we get to a healthy relationship. Rachel?
We discuss the elements of a healthy relationship, boundaries, and consent. So what are some of the things that have boundaries? Countries have boundaries, so do yards and sports fields. But what do boundaries mean in a relationship? You might think about kissing, touching, or sexual acts, but not all boundaries are physical. Other type of boundaries include beliefs and values that you expect others to share, like not being okay with someone criticizing your. What are factors that influence boundaries? Personality traits, life experiences, religion, culture, and personal values. Why might boundaries change? The passage of time, of growing up, becoming more or less comfortable, as well as trauma and other experiences. We can all agree that some things are never okay. If you know someone is physically harming, intimidating, or emotionally abusing your little, please take care and consider their safety. Also, thank them for turning to you, because you, with your match support specialist, are in a position to help. Moving on to consent. What are situations where people have to give consent? When you go to a healthcare provider, you have to sign documents that you're consenting for them to treat you. Or how about something more dangerous like rock climbing, parasailing, or something that I might actually do, eating the world's spiciest curry? Businesses ask you to sign waivers to ensuring that you understand what you're signing up for and the risks involved. But what does consent mean in a relationship? Consent is an ongoing conversation where partners mutually agree to things that they are comfortable with. And like boundaries, what each partner is comfortable with in a relationship can change over time. If someone withdraws their consent and puts up a new boundary, that should be respected. So what's the easiest, foolproof way to know if someone is giving their consent? Ask them. And as you may already know, a lot of relationships develop and play out online, especially when you consider the impact and availability of social media platforms and dating apps. So some things that you may want to consider talking to your littles about include what would make them feel most comfortable when talking to their potential or current partner online, what topics are off limits, and a somewhat harder scenario to consider If there's a fight or the relationship ends, what happens?
Presentation today. We just really want to thank you again for your time and attention and for the work that you do with your littles. It's so important, and your community really, really appreciates you. Remember that at the end of the day, this work is about love and equality. Human connections and relationships are the foundation of our social structures, and you have an opportunity to really influence and help littles start to see themselves in healthy relationships, healthy, intimate relationships with their partners. When the foundation's broken, it can impact everything, but we all deserve to live and love freely, safely, and peacefully, and we all have the capacity to change and heal. We need mentors to lift up this issue and help us work to prevent teen dating.
So thanks, Ashley, for emphasizing, what we all deserve to have, and the capacity and strength of our littles and each and every one of us to heal. So we will conclude the webinar with information on center services and other resources that are available in our community, so that you can be equipped with the tools to continue to be that responsive, trusted adult in a young person's life, or for others in your network. So the center is a great community resource for all. They provide shelter, legal, and crisis line, 24/7 crisis line, and that phone number is included on this slide. And they also provide education for students and professionals. In relation to your match, just please remember the match support specialists are always available and should always be your first call. We also encourage you to seek many of the resources that Big Brothers Big Sister provides, and Amanda will provide a quick overview of what those are and where to access them.
So on our website, we have different resources for various things that may come up in your match. So if you go to our website, which is bbbsky.org, and then go to the services tab, there are different places where you can access information. We have information about anti-racism and social justice, about LGBTQ initiatives. We also have things about youth safety and family resources. And we just have a lot of different resources available.
Awesome.
On the website.
Yeah, great. So definitely they've got a ton of great resources, as Amanda explained. So thanks for going over that, Amanda. And also thank you all for tuning in, and for all that each of you do as big brothers and big sisters in our community.
Thank you.